everyone, it's Lennon, and I want to do something, I want to show something fun today. Now, if you've watched my I Made a Tarot deck video, that was a deck that I made out of art that, like, healing images that I like, right? And it was so fun, and I did the whole process, and it did take me a while to, like, from point A to point B. But what I actually like to do is plug in stories, like my favorite novels, or maybe not even favorites, just like stories that like resonate with me, that have a type of a hero's journey storyline. Most stories do, and try to plug them into the tarot. I like to do that as a learning tool, and it has been so successful for me, because when I was first learning the tarot, I did it all by the book, I guess you could say. Like, I got all the resources I could, studied, but when it came time for me to kind of lay the books down and go off intuition, that's when the real I feel like that's when the real learning started. Like, I just felt like I was building the muscle, so to speak, of learning the tarot. And when I finally jotted down my initial thoughts of, like, especially major arcana, plug in the stories that resonate with me and see if I can map them out into a tarot deck. Because the tarot is so archetypal to me, you can plug in all sorts of characters. You can plug in all sorts of characters from a lot of stories into the tarot. But the way, and yours will probably come out a lot like mine, but it was kind of eye-opening to see which characters I put for which card. Because then that kind of opened my eyes to how I see that particular character. Like, who I would put for the Magician, maybe who you put for the High Priestess card, or even the Emperor card. So for me, it kind of opened my eyes as to see what the dynamic of the card actually meant to me by getting into the character's head a little bit. And I'm going to share a couple of them with you so that you can, there's really not much to see. It's just like, I always have one of these. And when I have ideas like this one, I tend to just grab one of these notebooks. I keep these in stock. I have a stack of them. And I just jot down my thoughts, and then I might expand on it. It might be an idea that just kind of fizzles out, but this one kind of stayed with me. Now, when I first made my Renaissance tarot deck, I realized that I'm a lover of mythology, just in general, right? And a lot of those, the paintings in the pre-Raphaelite era could be taken from mythology. Okay, I'll say could. Kind of like the mythic tarot or the tarot of Delphi, I wanted to see if I could, which characters / archetypes I could plug in for the majors, and then even go further into the minors if that was something that I felt like I could do. So I plugged in paintings from that era, pre-Raphaelite era, into the major arcana, and I got all of them done. Okay, all I did was Wikipedia Commons, which are, I don't really know how to explain it. It's like public domain images of that era, those paintings. So you could, like, they're free to use. And that was important to me, because when we're talking about copyright infringement or copying someone else's work and putting it down, even though I'm not going to do anything with these, I knew that I didn't want to steal anyone's art that they have actual rights to. So that was important to me, to use free stock images. So I did, and a lot of what I put down, and this was my initial thought before I even made that deck, I realized that when the whole thing was done, I was like, wow, I could probably actually make this into a deck. And that's what I did. That's how that came into fruition. So I'll leave that video up in the cards if you want to go check that out. It's just my Renaissance Renaissance tarot deck that I made that's not for sale. It's just something that I love to hold in my hands as something that I did. Another style of art that, another thing that I like to do is my style of art. Now, there are so many artists out there that have their own style, right? Like this type of watercolor, these types of particular color, a color scheme when dealing with art, impasto. There's just so many that, you know, a lot of artists have their own style. I don't have a style. When a vision comes to me, I paint it, and usually I just go off my own intuition as to which medium to use. So I don't have a style. But so that I thought that might hinder me when doing my own art in the deck, like my own paintings or my own drawings. And I don't know. Well, I was going to see where it goes, but I do have this thing that I like to do, which is called no face people. And they're doodles, they're really primitive doodles of figures that don't have faces. And I don't mean putting any shape to the head, I mean an oval, and there's no expressions, no eyebrows, nothing that could convey an expression of any kind. And I like to do that because I've actually done this since I was a kid. I actually like the viewer to put their own interpretation as to what the face may be saying. And I thought that was so powerful when I was 13 years old. My family liked that too, so I wanted to convey that into a tarot deck, and I drew a couple. And it seemed to work out, but I felt like when drawing those figures with no faces, I was basically just drawing the Rider-Waite deck, and they just happened to have no faces. They were just ovals in the place of heads. And I thought, you know, until I can do this, really do this in visions without putting a system down onto it, that'll be better and benefit me as far as a learning tool. So I scratched all of that. Another thing that was important to me when doing a deck, and when I looked for decks out in the world now, I look for inclusivity, and that's body image, sexuality, culture, okay? Like, I wanted a deck that conveyed all the cultures of the earth. But because of my own spiritual practice, my spiritual path is mainly like ancient times. What's the go all the way back to what we have written record of. What did they believe? What were their cave drawings like? You know, think Inanna, right? So goddess spirituality, that's the earth as the goddess spirituality. That's kind of how my spiritual path has gone. That's where it's gone, is that I want to know not what you believed 100 years ago or people, but way, way back, that before we even had written record. And so it was important to me to include some of those tribe cultures that were from way back in those times and what they might have believed, like before agriculture even. And so that was important to me. And so I looked up, like you can just Google it, tribes of the earth or whatever, like Aboriginal tribes from Australia, Native American tribes. And so I jotted some of those thoughts down to make a deck too. That didn't actually work out because I learned that there were so many tribes out there that it would have been a 1,000-card deck. So I couldn't condense it with just, you know, the majors and 4 suits thing that I did. And we're not even getting to the stories yet because I wanted to just kind of tell you how my brain mapped this whole process out. I wanted to do a kid tarot. Now I know that sounds kind of silly, but when like there's so many oracles out there, like affirmation decks and like calming word decks that kids could use, but I thought it was so powerful because we think about stress in a different way as children do, and they still have stress because their little brains, when they hit obstacles, that's a stress to them. That's like testing and grades and bullying and all those things that hit kids, and they hit them in their brain, and they do still feel stress. And I wanted to put that down into an actual tarot deck. Let's give them a little bit of structure. Let's put actual kid-like images in the deck, maybe some like cutesy pets. And if we were to teach the tarot and then teach the child how to read the tarot in a use your brain to see what in the image resonates with you. And that actually worked out pretty well. Okay. Now, my favorite hero's journey tale. Okay, we're going to get into this now because I didn't want this to be a long video. My favorite tale of the hero's journey is Tolkien's, okay, Lord of the Rings, and The Hobbit. Now, it's crazy with the Lord of the Rings because everything's licensed in Lord of the Rings. So even if I were to actually have gone through the whole process of making a deck, I couldn't do anything with it. So, but that still wasn't the goal here. The goal was for me to see if I could plug in different characters and the archetypes of the tarot, see if I could plug a story that I like into it. And I actually did the entire deck for Lord of the Rings. And what I did was, I feel like it was pretty amazing. Like I said, when I started to actually like primitively draw the tarot from a story, I tended to go Rider-Waite, and that confused me in the beginning, but then I just kind of went with it. And I have this beautiful sketchbook here, and the whole thing is filled with the images that I drew for this particular tarot deck. And like I said, I could never do anything with these particular drawings. I would have loved to one day, but everything's licensed, and gaining the rights to anything is pretty hardcore. There is a Lord of the Rings deck out there, but it is not sponsored by Warner Brothers, who own the rights to Lord of the Rings. And if he were to have made over a certain amount of money, it would have been really bad for him, whoever made that deck. So that was important to me too, not to do anything that would come back and haunt me. But you know, who knows, one day, right? I might do some cutaways of the drawings because I know that you're not going to be able to, I know that you're not probably going to be able to see some of these. But I'll do some cutaways while I talk about this. But when I was drawing this, and like I said, I really did have to go. These are just literally each card probably took a minute or two, and I just roughly sketched everything out from the like from just my brain. I love the moon card so much. Because it's like Frodo, and he's battling the images in his brain, right? But anyway, but I didn't just do the majors with this. I actually did do the minors as well. I went through the whole process, and I kind of went Rider-Waite, and it was important to me to incorporate the actual thing, like the actual what's important in the story, and like what the cups would be. That was important. And which character, like are you a hobbit? Are you an elf? Are you whatever? And so I really did try to map out that for each suit as well. And I'll continue to do the cutaways so that you can see. But so it was, I wanted to come on and tell you that, and encourage you, take your favorite story, even from childhood. This was something I read as a child. Take something that you read as a child or that you read now, plug in those character archetypes into the tarot, see if you can make a deck. And the minors can be something like this. Cups is ale, right? The swords. What is something that drives your characters, and what is something that's like mentally jarring for your characters? What is that? And that, put a symbol on it, and that could be the sword suit. think Lightseer's tarot, she put the birds, right? Something mentally that your characters are facing, that could be the symbol for the swords. Something emotionally that your characters are facing, that could be the cups. And just put a symbol down for the minors. And it ended up being such a good tool. I had already learned the tarot when I did this. I had already done it by the book. And I realized that I needed to build my muscle of intuition. I needed to be able to read the cards without having to quote from a book. And that was pretty tough. But the one way I'd opened myself up to that is I plugged my favorite story into the tarot. And now when I read, I don't just think about the book. I don't just think about like what my brain just automatically came up with. I can kind of see these pictures as well that I drew myself. And I can see my Renaissance deck as well. And then all of those images together and plug out a message. And that really helped me. So I encourage everyone to jot down their thoughts. And if you want to, like I said, these drawings took me 2 minutes. They're not perfect. I can still see so many lines of the eraser marks or whatever. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just for your eyes only. Fill a sketchbook with all your stories, or just write them down. Journal about why you picked Gandalf or the Magician and why you picked... I really had to juggle with Saruman being the devil, because I feel like it wasn't exactly what the devil card conveys, but so I did journal about that, and that helped too, journaling about why I picked those certain characters. Anyway, I'm rambling. So let me know about down below if you've done this, or if you agree with this type of a building your intuition. Like, is this a way that you would do it? And let me know what you think. So I hope everyone has a blessed day. Much love.